Today, we are diving deep into one of the most famous stories ever told, Noah's Ark. But what if the story that we all think we know is really just a cover for something much, much stranger? We're going to explore a kind of secret history, one that's been pieced together from ancient texts that turns the entire narrative completely on its head.
We all know the story, right? It's practically baked into our culture. A world gone completely wicked, and one righteous man, Noah, who gets chosen to build this massive ark. His mission? Save his family and two of every animal from a flood that's going to wipe the slate clean. It's the ultimate story of preservation, a second chance for humanity.
But what if that core idea is just wrong? What if the whole point of the flood wasn't to hit the reset button to save the best of humanity? Some ancient texts hint at a purpose that is way more radical and honestly pretty terrifying.
Yeah, this alternative theory, it suggests the flood was never about saving humanity. It was about wiping out the entire human race, the Adamic race, and replacing it with something new. And the key to this whole dark story? Well, it's Noah himself.
So, this first piece of the puzzle completely changes how we see the hero of the story, because according to some of these ancient scrolls, Noah wasn't just a good guy. He was something fundamentally other.
Now that description, that's not from Genesis. That's from the Lamech scroll, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's capturing the moment Noah's own father, Lamech, sees his newborn son for the first time, and he is absolutely terrified. He says he's fathered a strange son who looks like the sons of the God of heaven and whose nature is different. This is not a normal baby he's describing, it's an otherworldly being.
And this brings us to a really key phrase in Genesis. The Bible says Noah was perfect in his generations. Now, we've always read that to mean he was morally good or that he had a pure human bloodline, not corrupted by the Nephilim giants. But this theory, it flips that completely on its head. It suggests perfect meant he was from a perfect angelic lineage, not a human one. So he wasn't the last pure human, he was the first of a new hybrid race.
Okay, so let's follow that. If Noah isn't fully human, then the entire reason for the flood has to be looked at again. This changes everything. The goal might not have been to cleanse the world, but to clear it for a totally new kind of inhabitant.
So here you can see the two ideas side by side. The traditional story we all know is about purification, but this alternative view, it's about total replacement. It basically argues that the whole Adamic experiment was considered a failure. So the flood wasn't a bath, it was an extermination event to make way for Noah's descendants. And check out this verse from Genesis. It's spoken to Noah and his sons right after the flood, and in this new context, it's kind of haunting. See, Adam's original relationship with animals was supposed to be one of harmony. But here, God tells Noah's new family that from now on, animals will live in fear and dread of them. So why the change? Well, the theory says the animals recognize something alien, something not of the old world in this new post-human race.
And this is where the story gets even stranger. The Bible says only Noah and his family on the ark survived. But other ancient texts, they describe a handful of supernatural survivors who made it through the flood in very different and often horrific ways.
So who else made it? We're talking about three main groups besides the people on the ark: the human mothers of the Nephilim, at least one of the giants himself, and the fallen angels known as the Watchers who, started this whole mess in the first place. And each one had a unique and pretty terrible fate.
Let's start with the mothers. These were the human women who had children with the fallen angels. According to the Book of Enoch, they weren't just allowed to drown. No, their punishment was transformation. They were cursed to become sirens, immortal, predatory spirits of the water, forever bound to the very element that killed their children.
So this really lays out a whole new supernatural ecology for the post-flood world. The giant Nephilim? They drowned, but their spirits became what we might call demons. Their mothers became sirens in the seas, and their angelic fathers, the Watchers, were imprisoned deep inside the earth. The evil wasn't destroyed, it was just reorganized.
And then there was Og, the king of Bashan. This guy was a giant, one of the very creatures the flood was supposed to wipe out. Some old traditions say he survived by literally clinging to the outside of the ark after promising to be Noah's servant. And the sheer scale of this being is just staggering. His bed alone was over 13 feet long. He is a direct, physical link between the world before the flood and the world after.
This brings up a huge problem for the traditional story. If the flood wiped out all the giants, then how did they just reappear centuries later in the land of Canaan? We're talking about clans like the Anakim, who absolutely terrified the Israelites.
This is the central genetic mystery, right? The Bible is crystal clear that giants were back after the flood. So if they weren't all just hanging onto the outside of the ark, where did they come from? Well, the theory points to a stowaway of a different kind, a genetic one.
So here's how the theory explains it. It suggests the corrupted DNA was basically smuggled aboard the ark itself, inside one of the wives, specifically Ham's wife. Some traditions even link her to the line of Cain, which was already associated with the fallen Watchers. So when her son Canaan started to show these Nephilim traits, a horrified Noah didn't curse Ham for what he did, he cursed Canaan's specific bloodline, the very lineage that would later produce all those giant clans Israel had to fight.
Okay, let's put all these pieces together. When you combine an angelic Noah, all these supernatural survivors, and a genetic stowaway, you get a picture of a post-flood world that is anything but clean.
The New World Order looks something like this. Noah's family establishes a new, angelic human hybrid race. The oceans are now haunted by the cursed siren mothers. The lands of Canaan get repopulated by a second wave of giants, and deep beneath the earth, the imprisoned Watchers are still there, still a source of corruption.
So the ultimate takeaway from this whole alternative narrative is that the Great Flood wasn't an ending. It was just a transition. The ancient cosmic war between the forces of heaven and the corrupting influence of the Watchers, it never actually stopped. It just moved on to a new stage with new players and new rules. And that leaves us with a final, pretty unsettling thought. If the world was never truly purified, but just rearranged into this new, complex, supernatural ecosystem, what elements of that ancient conflict might have survived? What strange tides from that drowned world might still be reaching our shores today?